proofs with these. Now, when we break it apart and use the identity, we've got to be, we have to do it like plug it in exactly. So in those problems we just did, we said, okay, alpha plus beta divided by 2 and put it in there all at the same time. Here we're going to have to do that step as algebra. So first, when I look at the numerator, I know that I need to use sum to product, right? I don't know how to do that when those angles are different. So I'm using the cosine A minus cosine B. And so that numerator is going to change into negative 2. I'm going to rewrite it as horizontal division as I go here. Negative 2 times the sine of x plus 9x over 2 times the sine of x minus 9x over 2. And then divided by that 2 sine 5x. And that rule is, how did we go? We went sum to product. I believe in Alex, those are the same rule. If that makes sense, I believe it's just either sum to product or product to sum. So you don't have to think about which direction you went. I think you can just use that one drop down. But do pay attention to how we had to use the rule. Right? We plugged it in exactly. So now we can clean that up a little bit. And so we can make it negative 2 times the sine of, actually, let me not write it as horizontal division. Negative 2 times the sine of x plus 9x is 10x over 2 is 5x times the sine of x minus 9x is negative 8x, correct? Over 2 is negative 4x. And all of that is divided by 2 sine 5x. And all I did there was some algebra, right? All right, so what's next? What do you see pretty easily? We have some canceling to do, right? So these 2's cancel, and the sine of 5x cancels. So I'm left with negative sine of negative 4x. So that's also by algebra. And then remember in Alex, when you type it in, you could omit this step, right? Because both of those are algebra, but you would need it for your work. Then what am I going to use? Well, we've got to get rid of that negative 4x on the inside, right? So I'm going to have negative sine 4x. Because that's even odd, right? Because sine is odd, so we take that negative out front and then make that the sine of 4x by algebra. I don't know if it would let us not write it like this and go directly here by even odd, or if it would be grouchy about you didn't point out that you were pulling out that negative. Everybody okay with it? So now on your cheat sheet, we have our last rule or reason, which is product to sum and sum to product. And again, I'm pretty sure, like, I'm going to go with 85% sure that that's the same drop down. And out, with the rules, like I think those are the same ones, so I don't think you have to distinguish between am I going product to sum or am I going sum to product. Okay. So it's going to be pretty normal that we're going to be doing the sum to product or product to sum first. That'll be our first step because we've got to turn it into something we can work with, right? And it's not going to be odd for us to be using, what do I want to call it? Even odd, right? Because when we subtract those angles in there, we might end up with an even odd. So let's start by dealing with that numerator. And that is sine minus sine. And so let's fill that in. It's going to be 2 times the cosine of x plus 3x over 2 times the sine of x minus 3x over 2 divided by 2 cosine 2x. And that's our sum to product. And again, that's how you have to do that step. You can't go ahead and add it together. Alex wants you to show that piece that you understand what you're doing there. Then we can clean it up, right? And we can make it 2. I'll go ahead and write it as vertical. 2 times the cosine of 2x, right? Times the sine of negative x. All over 2 cosine 2x. And that's just algebra. And then it looks almost exactly like that last one, right? So we have the 2's are going to go, the cosine 2x is going to go, and we're left with the sine of negative x by algebra. So again, that green step, we needed it, but we don't have to put it in Alex. So we can just, that would be nice, right? To be able to go directly down. And then last, we are going to have negative sine x by even odd. Questions? All right. Now we have the same thing, except we have product to sum in the numerator and denominator. So the first step's going to be kind of ugly, right? Because we're going to have a lot of stuff going on. So let's see. In the numerator, we have sine plus sine. And in the denominator, we have cosine minus cosine. So my numerator is going to be 2 times the sine of 2x plus 4x over 2 times the cosine of 2x minus 4x over 2 divided by negative 2 times the sine of 2x plus 4x over 2 times the sine of 2x minus 4x over 2. And that whole step there, right? I took 2 boxes to do it, but that whole thing is sum to product, right? So then in our next step, we can clean it up. So we are going to have 2 times the sine of 6x over 2, 3x, cosine negative x, right? Over negative 2 times the sine of 3x times the sine of negative x. And again, that's just algebra, right? We just did some addition. And then we can do some canceling, right? So the 2's are gone and the sine of 3x is gone. So I'm left with the cosine of negative x over negative sine negative x. And that's also algebra. So again, when we wrote it down or when we typed it into Alex, we could ignore the brown line, right? What's our next step going to be? Even odd, right? So for cosine, we just ditch the negative, right? So it's cosine x over, we still have a negative, and then we have a negative sine x. That's even odd. And again, I don't think Alex will let you go directly to the cotangent of x or multiply these guys together and make it positive immediately, right? I think you've got to wait for that. So your next step would be just making that cosine x over sine x by algebra. And then your last step would be cotangent x by quotient. So I think the big things to take away are, first, that you do have to write this part out. That's the only way it's going to accept that rule. And the other is when you're doing the even odd, if you already have a negative out there and you're going to have to multiply it out, that multiplication step has to be algebra. It can't be part of the even odd step. All right, one more proof. So again, we have sum product to sum, and we've got something happening in the numerator and the denominator. So first we have sine minus sine, and then we have cosine plus cosine. So just like before, that first step is a doozy, right? So we are going to have 2 times the cosine of 3x plus 5x over 2 times the sine of 3x minus 5x over 2 divided by 2 times the cosine of 3x plus 5x over 2 times the cosine of 3x minus 5x over 2. And that is sum to product. Sum to product. Then our next step is to clean it up, right? So we'll have 2 times the cosine of 4x times the sine of negative x over 2 times the cosine of 4x times the cosine of negative x. Algebra. Now I can clean it up, right? So 2's go, cosine 4x goes, and I'm left with the sine of negative x over the cosine of negative x. And that's also algebra. Now from here we have 2 options. We can use even odd first and then turn it into tangent, right? Or since we already have sine and cosine and the angle is the same, I could go ahead and turn it into tangent and then use even odd. Okay? It does not matter which order because it's going to end up the same both ways. So I think I am going to, let's go ahead and use even odd. So that would be negative sine x over cosine x by even odd. And then our last step would be negative tangent x by reciprocal. No, quotient. Sorry. Cool? All right.